Today I'm going to be discussing primary prevention on hallucinogens. So a little bit of background on them. They're a group of drugs that alter perceived reality. More commonly, they are known as LSD, PCP, acid, mind candy, shrooms, Special K, X, ecstasy, and the list goes on. These are high risk for a number of reasons. One, they affect sensory perception in the brain. They affect your thoughts and behavior. This is particularly risky because you are no longer making rational decisions for yourself. The DEA has classified hallucinogens as a Schedule 1, which means there's no medical use for them, and there's a very high potential for abuse. Nationwide, students between the 9th to 12th grade have been reported at 6.4% have tried some form of a hallucinogen, and it's been noted that males typically are the ones that try it more often at 8%, and females are only making up 4.6%. We have seen a decreased usage between 2015 and 2001. It's decreased from 13.3 to 8.5% throughout those years. And within Texas, we've seen a lower rate. We had 2.6% to 3.1%, so we've got a little bit of an increase, but we're also still below the nationwide standard by about half. And then Nacogdoches, I couldn't find any concrete results. There was no great research. My best source that I found was an unreliable source, but they did report 0% of usage between students 9th through 12th grade. However, the important thing to note is that Texas is about half of the nationwide standard. So now we're into what gateway drugs are. And this is important because gateway drugs are drugs that are habit formers and they lead to substance abuse of other kinds. And hallucinogens are definitely not gateway drugs, but the reason these are important because gateway drugs that do form these habits are marijuana, alcohol, and prescription drugs. There's a lot more, but these are the three big ones. Alcohol use is easy to abuse and it's fairly easy to get. It's got quite a bit of accessibility and availability. Prescription drugs put you at risk because initially you get them through a prescription and very quickly that can become abused. And marijuana use, especially starting at an early age, is again quite available and accessible, especially to students. And one problem with gateway drugs is with the young exposure. The younger you are that you're exposed to these drugs, the greater the effects you see through growing up. So especially with marijuana, the earlier you are exposed to it, the dopamine reactivity in your brain is less reactive, and that carries on through adulthood. So as I mentioned, non-gateway drugs are going to be more along the lines of your hallucinogens, such as PCP, speed, LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin. The reason this is important is because non-gateway drugs are not typically what a new user is going to decide to start using it. It's not usually the starting place. And that's important for noticing behavior in adolescents or young adults, especially if you're a parent or caregiver. And things you'd want to look out for are changes in someone's mood or behavior, but outside of normal means, which basically just means with disregards to teenagers' hormone changes. This is things like laughing at nothing or irrational anger. Also, things to note for are changes in sleep or appetite, seizures without any previous epilepsy, also nosebleeds and a flat affect. And if you notice your young adult, person you care for, with an all like a sudden increase in interest in drug paraphernalia or posters, bands that promote drug usage. Those all kind of indicate that your person that you care for is perhaps taking some non-gateway drugs. So what puts them at risk, or people at risk, are adolescents and young adults, particularly low socioeconomic status. And the reason this is because the lower socioeconomic status you are, the more likely to have high-risk behaviors. And then especially combined with hallucinogens coming as tablets or paper. So they look like candy, they're appealing to eat, and they can be taken orally. This makes them particularly dangerous for children and the adolescent age. And they come in all kinds of different colored tablets, and there's graphic designs on the paper, so that attracts youths that are curious, and it makes they look fun to take, which is particularly dangerous, and that's why it puts adolescents and young adults at greater risk. So the signs and symptoms of hallucinogens, on a psychological standpoint, you're going to see mood changes that are inappropriate, so the outbursts of laughter or anger with no reason, lethargy and flat affect, or a personality change. On the behavioral side, you could see lack of desire to succeed, theft, a change in friends, or increased usage of perfumes, incense, colognes, air fresheners, anything to cover up smells of drugs, or just an increased interest in it. And physical symptoms are going to be bloodshot eyes, changes in mood and behavior again, change in sleep or appetite, seizures without epilepsy, and nosebleeds. And then those are my references.
Today I will be going over hallucinogens, the secondary preventions. A little bit of an overview. I will be going over the different types of hallucinogens, the physiological effects and the behavioral effects, and how serious is the use of using hallucinogens. Some of the different types of hallucinogens that I found were psychedelics, dissociatives, and deliriants. For psychedelics, they strip away our selection process in our brain. They can even experience an overwhelming sense of colors, sounds, smells, and textures. For psychedelics, they can experience visions and hearing voices. Some of the examples that I found were LSD, peyote, and mescaline. For dissociatives, they cause a sensory deprivation where the mind is free to create its internal environment and perceptions. It can even produce an out-of-body experience, and the examples that I found were magic mushrooms, PCP, ketamine, and DXM. Deliriants, they can create false perceptions, and they enter a stupor-like state of confusion. Sometimes it's like they don't even know where they are. It just takes over for them. And some of the examples that I found were datura, deadly nightshade, and ginseng weed. Some of the physiological effects. These are the things that can happen while using a hallucinogen. It can increase their blood pressure. It can increase their heart rate, dilation of the pupils, weight loss, and nausea. Some of the feelings may be intensified. Time passes slowly. It can be as if they were drinking. They may have some of the side effects of drinking to where the day after they can possibly, feel nauseated because they can't take the effect of it. They can either suffer from a coma or convulsions and even death. All of this just depends on how much of it they had taken that day or at that moment, or for how many years they had been on this hallucinogen. And there are so many hallucinogens out there that many of these things could happen. It just depends on the type of hallucinogen that was taken and for how long. The behavioral effects are different because it depends on the hallucinogen that is being used. It holds conversations with imaginary people, can even have a psychotic state of mind. They can have the ability to control one's behavior. Their sexual drive may be affected. It can be to where they have a sexual drive, or for some they may not. It just depends on the particular type that was used. For some, they can even get dressed without picking out their clothes like we normally would. For some of us, we have to pick our clothes out either the day before or that morning before we can even put it on. And for them, they could just pick clothes and put it on and be okay with it. For others, they can be creative at that moment during their high that they're experiencing. They can create pictures and think this the most beautiful thing that they have created, but in fact, it may not be the most beautiful thing that they have created. It may be something that may look pretty at the time that they're during that moment, and then when they come out of it, they may look at it and say, wow, why did I do that? But it just depends, on the type, if they either create one or more, or maybe they have a collection of pictures that they have created during their creative moment at that time. And how serious is the use of hallucinogens? Well, all of these things could happen, but it depends on how long the person was a user and which one of the types they were taking at the time. It can affect their everyday life. For instance, it can affect their work. Their supervisor may notice that they're lacking in what they were very good at, or they may not even present themselves to work so that they can get that experience that they get on a daily basis because they don't want to feel how life is going at that moment. It can even affect their family to the point where their family may not even trust them, for certain things because they're not reliable. They can't function the way that they were functioning at one point, making them more scary to be around with. They can even have rapid changes in mood, and that goes with family and work, because if they're not, all the time the way they normally are when they're happy, and then they have the emotional where they're just really negative the whole time, that could affect the way their family and their job sees them, as not seeing them as a person that can communicate either with their customers or with their family, making it extremely difficult. They can even suffer from memory loss and have speech problems. The user sometimes can't distinguish between what's real and what's a fantasy. They struggle with that during the experience or the high that they're experiencing at that moment. Our serotonin is affected by the use of hallucinogens, and serotonin is a vital neurotransmitter that regulates some of our body functions. It also affects our dopamine and norepinephrine by how much is being secreted into our body at that time. Each drug will either affect how much is produced in our bodies to cause our bodies to function in a different way. It can be very serious to the point where our body isn't producing what we need it to produce. It can send us maybe in a state of shock, and maybe that's where the death comes in play, where it can affect the person to the point where they end up in the hospital because it can't be controlled and their body can't function the way it was functioning. And these are my references, and thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Michael Villarreal, and I'm going to tell you today about hallucinogens and the experiences had between them, the settings they're taken in, and reasons why people take them. The first hallucinogen is LSD. It's one of the most common consumed hallucinogens in our society. Really gets its height from the 60s and the 70s with the hippie era and all the rock and Woodstock. Um, when it's consumed, it most often gives the user a psychedelic effect, and it makes them feel very euphoric and uplifted. Distorts their sense of time, gives them euphoric feelings, distorts their visuals, and so the way they see, and it decreases their inhibition, which means they're going to make more choices that they normally wouldn't make because their cares are almost not there. LSD does have a tolerance that builds up very quickly, so that means that a user is going to have to double their dose to get the same feeling, or they're going to have to space out their doses in order to keep feeling the same amount that they want through that first trip. Otherwise, they're going to be weak and they're going to be ineffective and they're not going to be getting the high that they want to get. Um, the LSD trip begins to take effect about 30 to 90 minutes after you take your dose. The trip or the high will normally last around 6 to 8 hours, but there are other accounts of the drug effects lasting up to even 12 hours, or then even having flashback effects up to 24 to 48 hours afterwards. Um, you see visuals, which is not like the classic, oh, there's a dragon sitting next to me with, fire and gold. There, it's more of just stuff that's, it looks like you're looking underneath water. It distorts it to make it waves and kind of kaleidoscopy. Not really that you're going to see anything that's not there. Um, Many users claim to have a heightened sense of creativity, and it distorts our perception, so that the way they see the world is going to be different. The other or hallucinogen that we talking about is shrooms. The magic mushrooms they're closely connected with effects of LSD. Just like with LSD, that stimulates the autonomic nervous system. It dilates the pupils and increases the body temperature. Users report less euphoric visuals, so you're not going to see as much on this one, but increased perceptual effects. So your time is going to be greatly distorted, and people tend to say they get lost in shrooms more than they do LSD. They do experience, I think, a heightened sense of peace with the world than with LSD is more um, agitated. Hallucinogens are a very different type of drug compared to alcohol or like tobacco or even marijuana. The user is not mainly going to be able to hide the effects of the drug. It's so that their pupils often dilate, so they have big black pupils, and that often just alone alerts other people in the world that, hey, there's something off about this guy. Um, Also, you're going to be such an euphoric and heightened sense of feeling most of the time, unless you're having a bad trip, that you're going to be giddy and smiling and laughing and just you're going to be a little kid, and it's going to look really weird if you're an adult acting like a little kid, and that automatically sets people's alarms off. Many also don't want to waste a trip on everyday situations, so you're not going to take a high dose of LSD and just go to the shopping mall or just sit at home most of the time. You mainly want to do it somewhere where there's going to be entertainment, or you're going to be you know entertained. Um, that's why they're most abused at concerts or music festivals. The euphoric feeling of the drug pairs well with the dancing and the music played, and so you hear the music in your ear, makes you want to move. The drug's just going to heighten that and increase all your desires to do so. People also abuse them while they're on vacations because they're trying to escape their everyday life, and they want to just get away and use view a different type of reality. They're also used at parties to not only enhance the euphoria, oh hey, I'm having a good time, but it gives you're not going to feel tired. Because of that energy, that spike that's given, you're always going to want to keep partying, and you're going to be able to last till 4 or 5 in the morning and ask why is everybody else going to bed? Let's keep going. The most reason why I would say people abuse hallucinogens is because they want to escape their reality. Every day working 9 to 5 can get mundane, and stress of family or just job in general. You want to escape from reality, and this distortion of reality from hallucinogens is great. It makes it. It is you're so far distorted that you really don't know what is going on at times. Um, Heightened experiences of pleasure and euphoria also so help you relax and you feel good. Um, it also helps people say, artistic people say that they like to, because it opens up the creativity channels that are within their brain. And so they feel like they can express more of themselves and create better art or music with what they have. It is rumored that John Lennon took LSD for every day of his life for about 2 years in the 70s. And I think that's just that's crazy. That's incredible. I can't believe how he survived that. But that's mainly a reason why users are going to abuse hallucinogens in the first place.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Waikula, and I'll be mentioning the hallucinogens usage as well as PTSD and how it can be used as a treatment. So, PTSD stands for post traumatic stress disorder, and this is basically a disorder that individuals may develop if they have been in a very traumatic situation. So, they're traumatized and they're most likely to experience episodes due to specific triggers. These triggers can be like smells as well as sights and usually memories. And individuals that are more susceptible to gaining PTSD are males. And according to medlineplus.gov, usually about 7.7 million American adults can get this at any age as well. And usually people that we see this in are the ones that are in the military, war, and returning veterans. So this slide just mentioned the statistics of this drug usage. So pretty much in 2002, we had a study, and it's relatively steady since 2002 with this usage of this specific drug, as well as in 2014, there were about 936,000 people that are over the age of 12 who used this in the first time within the past 12 months. These are just recreational usage. And like I mentioned before, it's higher among males than females. So this just shows the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. I found this picture, and around it just has different symptoms, like he felt fearful, flashbacks, he had nightmares, difficulty sleeping, angry outbursts, just really random things that can occur at any time. That's why I believe that hallucinogens can be used as a treatment, and why studies should still do research on it, because it really is essential. These are more clinical manifestations that people may experience. There goes anxiety and nightmares. Like I mentioned, triggers, disturbances. This slide right here mentions Matthew Johnson and how he's studying right now the usage of hallucinogens used as a treatment, and he's just basically saying that that it should be researched, it should be studied, that these can possibly be proper medical usages if they're used under a constrained, limited circumstance. Research, treatments, hallucinogens, and PTSD. So basically right here it just mentions how the FDA gave approval for the usage of MDMA for a research clinical trial. So they had a phase 3 clinical trial of MDMA that was given to 230 people over 2 to 3 years. And then later on, they had a phase 2 clinical trial, and 61% of the 107 participants with chronic treatment resistant PTSD no longer had the disorder. And this was the usage of MDMA. And pretty much they want to continue to do more trials as so with larger groups. And then I added the statement. It says, for the first time ever, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy will be evaluated in phase 3 trials for possible prescription use with MDMA assisted psychotherapy for PTSD. So basically all these researches and statistics are just more evidence to show why hallucinogens can be a way of treating PTSD. So psychobilin and its usage, I can't pronounce the word, is very essential as well when it comes to treating cancer patients. So pretty much there was an individual named Mr. Miha who just finished his treatment, and he had stage 3 cancer. lymphoma to be more specific, and they prescribed this drug to him to reduce like his anxiety and his depression when it came to him being in the hospital, and the results seemed to show that the drug was very essential. It happened to work, and they started to create a trial to use this drug on different individuals as well. So that's why I see how this hallucinogens can help with mental health issues. There is uncertainties when it comes to using these specific drugs as treatments, as well as any other type of drugs. Researchers don't want to condone the usage of like mushrooms or hallucinogens when it comes for self-treatment. They just want to use their research safely, so they don't want individuals just to go out and try to self-treat themselves. And as well as any other like opioids or any types of drugs, they can be very addictive, which is why another reason for it can cause danger to patients if they were trying to treat it.
Hi everyone, my name is Summer Willis, and I'm going to be talking about hallucinogens and how they can be damaging to physical health, psychological health, as well as social health, and how we can help to prevent the use of hallucinogens in collegiate-aged young adults. Hallucinogens are considered psychedelics, which are considered to be mind-revealing or creative. They heighten the senses. They cause loss of self-control. They cause self-reflection and a loss of identity. People experience out-of-body experiences, almost like they have epiphanies. The way that hallucinogens work in the body, they act on the neurotransmitter serotonin, which neurotransmitters are basically chemical messengers. They relay messages from one point to the other, and it's a proven fact that hallucinogens they alter the serotonin activity, but it's not exactly proven how. In fact, it needs additional research on this subject. While some people's reactions to hallucinogens can be very psychedelic and fun and happy, that's not always the case. They can be very dangerous. Possible extreme physiological symptoms could be deadly. They include increased body temperature, electrolyte imbalance, which could lead to serious cardiac arrhythmias, lack of control. They don't sense pain, so they feel like they're unstoppable, which is very dangerous because they don't feel pain. If they were to harm somebody, they're just unstoppable. And especially the worst reaction is cardiac arrest, the most dangerous. Potential long-term effects of hallucinogen usage include hallucinogenic persisting perception disorder, which is a long-lasting condition by spontaneous recurrence of visual disturbances that are much like acute intoxication. And they can last for years. The person can have flashbacks, which is literally a flash of light in their brain, and it always happens. This disorder always happens within a certain time of cessation of use. It can also cause acute hallucinogenic psychosis, which is also similar to schizophrenia. Some hallucinogens are considered club drugs and are very, very easy to slip into somebody's drink when they're not watching because they're odorless, they're colorless, they're tasteless. So they're especially dangerous to the college-age students who go out to the club and go like to have a drink every now and then. They're also a very high risk drug to due to the fact that a lot of unwanted sex happens during usage, and especially violent rapes. Statistics show that experimentation with illicit drug use increases during the college years. It's not. It has a lot to do with fraternity and sorority involvement. There was a study done in 2002 and 2003 during that academic school year, and 22% of the college students in that study reported hallucinogen usage during their lifetime. And that's shocking because there was only a 16% reported usage of opiates, which are a lot more easier to obtain. And you would think that that would be higher, but hallucinogens had a higher statistic. What can we do to prevent the usage of hallucinogens? Education, education, and education. There's not enough that we can do besides educate, educate, educate before it even happens. There's not a better way to prevent primary usage of hallucinogens. Even collegiate prevention programs. I don't know if there's one at SFA right now, but there's a study stating that prevention options targeting college-aged populations is much needed. And then also we need treatment options for current users. Thank you for listening.